This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, talking to Adrian Heath, Minnesota United manager, in just a little bit here. Optimism after a 0-4 start. Criticism from fans. All other isms in play as I talk to Adrian Heath. Good times talking to him about all sorts of subjects. A very candid interviewee, so I hope you guys enjoy that one. Some good questions from you, the listeners, as well, that I mixed into that. So that will be coming up here in just a few minutes. Also talking a little bit of Wild at the end, as well, as we get ready for Game 6 Wednesday night back at XL Energy Center against Vegas. But first, what did I miss? Guys, remember earlier in the year where Byron Buxton was ailing a little bit. They couldn't really Twins couldn't really figure out left field, couldn't figure out that last outfield spot. No Eddie Rosario. They let him go. By the way, that seems like a pretty good decision because he's not having a good year for Cleveland. But all the Twins left fielders, extra outfielders, is not playing well. Jake Cave getting way too much playing time, not doing well with it. Luis Arias, much better in the infield than he is in the outfield, and doesn't hit for enough power probably to play one of those corner outfield spots anyway. They brought up some youngsters that have helped, Kirilloff and Larnach for sure, but turns out primarily that help was just a Refsnyder away. Rob Refsnyder. Never heard of him before this season. No offense to him, but he was a journeyman. Basically, he's 30 years old, had like a 602 career OPS for 4 different teams from 2015 to 2020. The Yankees, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Texas. Good enough fielder, solid enough player, can play a lot of different positions. He's played second base, left field, first base, right field, even a little center field now for the Twins in his career. But, so a guy like that will be useful, but not much at the plate in his limited time. Comes to the Twins. Gets called up because, things are dire. He's 30 years old. Got to figure chances are not going to be plentiful, right? There's not going to be a whole lot more opportunities for Rob Refsnyder in a major league career if this is what it's been to date. But for the Twins so far, hitting .438, OPS of 1.191. That's after hitting 2 doubles and a home run against Baltimore on Tuesday night as the Twins won their 5th game in their last 6 tries. Still 10 games under 500, but a lot better than they were 6 games ago when you win 5 out of those. So creeping up a little bit in the standings, and a lot of it has to do, let's be honest, with Rob Refsnyder. It's weird to say, but again, 2 doubles and a home run, a diving catch, scored 3 runs in a 7-4 win. Getting on base at a .472 clip. A lot of that's the hitting, not necessarily walking a ton, but, I love stories like that. They're fun. You don't know how long they're going to last, but unexpected joy is always the greatest joy in sports. I think that was one of the things that made Lou Ford such a cult hero for the Twins back in the 2000s. Nobody expected Lou Ford to put up big numbers, but he ended up having some good seasons for the Twins, despite not having a huge pedigree. So, not saying Rob Refsnyder is the next Lou Ford, but I am saying it's kind of a fun story on this year's team, giving them some depth in the outfield in combination with Trevor Larnach and Alex Kirilloff, where they didn't have it before. Now when Byron Buxton comes back at a certain point, obviously center field becomes his again. Larnach and Kirilloff for the future. Max Kepler still in the mix when he's healthy. Not sure where the role is for Rob Refsnyder at that point. Don't know if he's still going to be red hot at that point. The career numbers would suggest that he won't be, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the wave, the ride he's on right now, the role he's on right now, and this mini spurt by the Twins. They're playing Baltimore. They've got a bunch against Kansas City, and even some more here against Baltimore after this. If they are going to creep up at all into a semi-meaningful position in the standings, this is the time to do it. And let's face it, however it's going to get done is going to be just fine by them. And if Rob Refsnyder is going to lead the charge, even better. I got to mention, too, one thing that will help them. Zach Plesac, Cleveland pitcher, goes on the injured list with one of the all-timers. I mean, we've had knuckle push-ups here with Kevin Love. in terms of injuries. You had, Rick Aguilera getting hurt, lifting a suitcase one year. You had Marty Cordova getting hurt and by staying in a tanning bed too long. At least that was the rumor back in the day. Zach Plesac from Cleveland injured his thumb, broke his thumb, according to manager Terry Francona, by too aggressively taking off his shirt. I don't even know what to say about that other than to pass along that information, but just seems amazing. But he's a good pitcher for Cleveland, and if he's going to be out for a fair amount of time because of that, that can only help the Twins' cause to whatever extent that cause can be helped.
Enjoy your money your way when you switch to Royal Credit Union. You can pay friends and family for free, deposit checks on the go, and even get alerts about your account sent in real time. Stop in and open your account today or get started at rcu.org/yourway. Insured by NCUA.
Really happy to be joined on Daily Delivery today by Adrian Heath, Minnesota United manager. It's got a little bit of a, not downtime for you so much because you guys are still training, but kind of a weird spot in the schedule. So appreciate you joining me as his things have not as intense right now, but we'll certainly pick up soon again. Adrian, how are you today?
I'm good. We had a good training session this morning, Michael. We've had a couple of new signings participating and getting on the grass with the rest of the guys, so that was nice. It's been a long drawn-out saga getting them over the line, but finally getting them here and trying to integrate them into the group has been quite pleasing, I've got to say.
That's good. So, the start to the year, we can get into that a little bit. I want to talk about the new guys too, because I feel like that's a momentum changer, especially, coming off the 2 wins here lately. But you start the year 0-4 after, coming within minutes of playing with the MLS Cup last year. When that happens, how do you kind of bridge the gap or strike a balance between, you want to play with some urgency because the season doesn't last forever, but you don't want to panic because you've got a plan in place and you still believe in the plan. How do you kind of manage that when you're 0-4?
I think you look at the way that the games have gone, Michael. You look at Seattle now, top of the league. For an hour, we were far and away better than them in the first game. They scored that wonder goal, and then it sort of unraveled for us a little bit after that game. But we took enough positives from that first game against a team that once again had been to 4 of the last finals. So we know we were playing a good team, but we also knew that there were a lot of positives in them 4 games. And the most important thing for me is to try and keep an even keel of not going too crazy, exciting-wise when we're winning and not being in the depths of despair when we're losing. Somewhere in the middle is basically where you are. And, I took positives out of that. I took positives out of our first half performance away in Colorado. But for us to lose that game, having been 2-0 at half time, it was a real disappointment. But there were enough positives within them games for me to not lose faith or belief in this group at such an early stage of the season as well.
Was that validated a little bit when you win twice after that start? And again, 6 games does not define a season. You still got a long way to go, but it helps to get results, I would imagine, before, you don't want to be 0-6 anyway.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing is it calms everything down and takes the desperation out of every press conference that you make, social media for the clubs. And I get that that's part and parcel of the world we live in now. I think it's become probably the biggest enemy for any coach now is social media, and everybody's an expert. Everybody's got an opportunity to express their opinion. I always say, Michael, it's a strange one that I would never, ever tell a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer what their job is. And yet I seem to have everybody in the world can do my job and tell me what I'm doing wrong. But I suppose that's part and parcel of being in sports at this level.
Do you go on social media? How are you on it? Or are you just told about it? Do you stay away from it? What do you do?
I very rarely, I have 1 or 2 things that I'll read, but social media I don't go on. And I think at times I'm too excitable, and I've
No. I've never
I
heard
worry
about that
about what
you.
I would say in the spur of the moment, and so I stay away from it as far as possible. But I do know that when you're 0-4, it's not going to be nice things that I would have been reading. I'm very much aware of that.
Are you aware there's a Heath out hashtag on Twitter of
There
people
you go.
who,
Yeah.
are you aware of that?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I know.
You don't want to hear about. I know you don't want to hear about it. I just was curious if you ever if you lurk on Twitter or anything like that. I'm glad you're not. That's not good for your psyche.
No.
That's not good for anything like that.
No.
When you
for
do,
sure, I know that every football club in the world, people have got people who are against them, people who are for them. But the most important thing is that the people who I work for, they see what we're trying to do, and it's 4 years of gradual improvement. And last year we went to the Western Conference Final, and in terms of 4 years, I think we've come a long way.
Does making the final, or I'm sorry, the Western Conference Final last year, that creates a certain level of expectation. I don't know if it's a burden. I don't know if it's just reality, but that does raise the stakes a little bit, right?
Well, it does, and but that's got to be part and parcel of the evolution and the growth of a football club. If you are getting better, people expect more. Now, we went and spent a lot of money last year on Reynoso, and I think everybody saw what he could contribute to us to make us better. We honestly believe that with the new signings with Adrian Heath now and Franco Fragapane, that will take us even further along this road. So as expectations grow, I think that we have to grow with that and have to take it on the chin and ride with it, really, and expect to deliver what people want us to deliver.
And that gets me to one of the reader questions I got from Colin Solberg. How do some of the big new attacking additions change the way you want to play, if they do at all?
Well, obviously, Adrian Heath now can play through the middle. Franco plays predominantly down the left, coming in on his right foot, a little bit like Kevin Molino did. And obviously, Kevin was a big piece for us last year, so that will fill that all in. Robin Lode obviously can go back and revert to what we feel is his best position, which is playing on the right, coming in on his left foot. So when I look at the pieces now, we're pretty much nearly set from what I wanted at the beginning of the year. Now, obviously, these transfers get long and drawn out at times and get very protracted, and these two have probably taken longer than we expected and longer than we would have liked, but we have got the right players in. And I feel once we get these embedded into the system, embedded into life in Minnesota, I think there'll be two huge pickups for us.
The nature of how transfers work, especially, I think, even before we started recording here, you noted, the soccer in the United States is on a completely different calendar than everywhere else. Is it frustrating how the transfer window doesn't necessarily line up, or how you're trying to negotiate all that and your downtime, your national team training, everything like that just kind of comes right in the middle of everything for us here?
Yeah, and that is one of the frustrations, because it's not ideal. When you consider that most of the seasons are finishing around the world now. So the players that you would be looking at are available now. When we get down to our off season, when we are trying to put together a group of players and add one or two pieces, that's generally halfway through the year for a lot of these clubs, and they're reluctant to do deals then because they're going to wait till the end of their season. So at times it can be frustrating, and it can be a little bit disappointing, because you've got players lined up that you think this guy's going to be perfect for us, and then the clubs go, listen, the season's not going out the way we planned, we're going to keep hold of him till the end of the year. And that's basically what happened with a couple of these guys. So as I say, it's frustrating at times, but it is what it is. We have to get on with it, and if we have to wait, then we have to wait.
Dean wants to know, you mentioned Kevin Molino a moment ago. Dean Campbell, any regrets about his departure, him being not on the roster anymore? Obviously a guy that, has been a big part of what happened here and been with you for a while. Yeah,
as I say, I've been with Kevin since he was sort of 17-year-old boy, seen him grow up into the man. And, every sort of relationship probably has its ending. And Kevin just felt for him coming at this stage of his season. He got a great deal in Columbus. He got a 3-year guaranteed deal. and at his age, he felt as though that was what he wanted for stability. And he felt as though he probably needed another voice as well, which I fully respect. We have a good relationship. We still speak, and we'll always do, because, as I say, we go back a long way together. But no, he's moved on, and we wish him well. And but he is it is a hole to fill, because when Kevin's at his best, he's as good as anybody in this league. But we honestly believe, with Franco Fragapane coming in, and that role, that void that Kevin's sort of left will be filled.
Is there? I mean, I feel like a lot of other sports, there's a momentum that builds, especially when you play somewhat regularly. Soccer, I mean, you sometimes you might play every 4 days, but how do you build momentum on your roster and throughout a season when there are these kind of fits and starts, and you're bringing new players in, and it's a little less connected than some other seasons are, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it depends on what type of run you on as a club. We just had 2 results, which were great for us. It would have been nice to have continued. But what it has done, it has given us an opportunity to get some real quality work in to certain players and rest 1 or 2 players who were carrying little knocks. Now, we go into this game at the weekend against Salt Lake. I could probably do without the next 2 weeks after that being off, because I feel as though we're just about getting everybody fit and healthy. I'm confident we can go and get a result at the weekend in Salt Lake. And that would set us up nicely on the back of what would be then 3 wins, if that was what was to happen. So, it's not ideal. But once again, the Fragapane who now situation, it will give us more time working with them and for them to get familiar with their teammates.
Reader Dan Wade wants to know, with Reynoso being, such a key to the offense and being very targeted. I mean, he's been, what he did last year drew a lot of attention from defenses, especially this year now. How do you think about balancing minutes, balancing his exposure, things like that as the season goes along?
Well, I think the re-entry of these other players will help, because certainly in the games this season, it's not going to notice that, they take it in turns to have a little pop at Ray, and it's never the same guy, so he doesn't get booked. So they share in the load round in terms of what they're dishing out to Reynoso. But I honestly believe now, with 1 or 2 more pieces, real offensive threats, that's going to be very difficult for people to do. I think there's going to be a lot more other threats on the field for people to deal with. So we think the inclusion of the other 2 guys is going to help. But ultimately, that's the price that Ray's going to have to pay for being a talented footballer. He's had it throughout his career, and he's going to have to get on with it.
I had a few more questions about substitutions. I'm not going to get into every single specific one. A subject near and dear to your heart, as the supporters dearly know. But I will ask just a big picture question. As you think about, do you have an overriding philosophy for how you want, what your substitution patterns are? Is it a game by game thing based on how players look, what the game calls for, things of that nature?
Yeah, I think each game, it depends on each game. Sometimes you're watching your team and you think, this isn't working and we need to shake it up. The system that we're playing is probably not ideal today for the way that the other team's set up. But, I know American sports fans have a strange fascination with substitutes. I get more correspondence about substitutes than, when we win games or when we lose. Why didn't so-and-so come on? And the one thing I will say is that sometimes it's difficult for players to come on and pick up the pace of a game immediately. And sometimes that disrupts the rhythm of the group. That might not be the answer that some people want to hear, but, I invariably, the result as well also has a bearing on substitutions. If you're chasing the game, invariably you will put another front man on, or you will play, 4-2-4 and play 4 up. Or if you're defensively minded and, you're in the lead and, you might shove another midfield player in there. So I don't have any set rules other than each game, what I feel is necessary to change the course of the game, either in attacking sense or in a defensive sense.
So you're saying your experience isn't the same as like a dentist? You wouldn't go to your dentist and say, why did you take that tooth out? Why did you take this tooth out?
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sensible in that way. I know my strengths and my limitations. Thanks.
I know you're more than a football manager, a soccer coach. You are a sports fan. I want to talk a little bit of sports here beyond the pitch before we go. I think you've been watching some Wild in the playoffs. I hope so. Kirill Kaprizov, is he the treatment he's getting in the playoffs? Maybe I can link this a little bit. Is that a little bit of the Reynoso treatment that you've been seeing? Is he getting knocked around pretty good? And how have you, as you watch these games, how have you seen he and the Wild respond?
Well, I think firstly he's such an exciting player to see. I'm not the didn't grow up watching hockey, I've got to be honest, but obviously being in the state of Minnesota, it's a bit difficult to ignore it. And all my friends locally where I live in Wayzata, they're all big Wild fans, so I get to keep up to date with what they tell me what's going on. And obviously the kid is an exceptional talent. But yeah, if you're the opposition and you think this guy's going to be the number one problem for you to advance it in the next round, you're going to do everything you can to sort of not eliminate him completely, but certainly make it as difficult as possible. And I don't see any difference in the hockey than the football or whatever it may be, whatever sport. If you've got somebody that you feel, if you can nullify him, would that enhance your chances of moving through to the next round, I think you're going to do it.
Some other teams in this, some other summer teams, even Twins come to mind, Lynx, starting out 0-3 right now, maybe missing some players, a little parallel to what you're going through. Can you kind of draw parallels? Do you watch how other, not necessarily how, not just how other teams are going, but, do you see how they're being run and pick up little things here and there, just kind of watching them from afar and saying, man, that looks familiar. The burden of expectation looks familiar, and trying to win when everyone's expecting you to win.
Yeah, I think there's also the big one for me, Michael. I like watching coaches before, during, and after games. I think you can pick up an awful lot watching coaches on the back of defeats, their demeanor and their response to the question, and sometimes they're already starting their build-up play for the next game. So that I always take a real interest in that. I think there are correlations in most of the sports in terms of, when you, certainly after defeats, I think that's when it's really interesting to listen to other coaches, and you can pick up one or two things from that. But no, I think overall, we're all in the same boat, that, the expectation levels, and as I said, the social media now is nearly every coach's enemy, regardless of the sport that you're in, because it doesn't matter whether you're being successful or you are losing at that particular time. There's always an element of supporters out there who, whatever you do, you can't seem to win, but we have to get on with that.
Someone brought a Fire Rocco sign to Target Field a couple of weeks ago. I hope that's not going to be you.
I'm sure there will be at some stage, but I think that the people who run our football club, as the people of who run the Twins, I think Rocco's done an unbelievable job in the last few years that he's been here. So, the king is dead. Long live the king, they say in England. So, let's carry on and let's do the job to the best of our ability.
Short memories.
Yes, exactly.
Do you watch? I assume you watch some of the PGA over the weekend. I think you're a little bit of a golf fan.
Yeah.
Mickelson, age 50, wins, becomes the oldest to win a major. Did he make you want to lace up the boots again and give it a go, or did you just watch which with fascination and
Well,
interest?
I actually played Michael till I was 36, which is probably very similar sort of age in terms of the sport that you play. But I think what it did prove, that there's still no substitute for class. I think that he's obviously had a change around, and he's listening to him in the last couple of days. He's changed his diet. He's changed his approach to the game. But the thing that stuck out for me was his game management of the day, when, the scenes around him were incredible, but you could see he kept that focus and, didn't go and try and do anything too clever, went for the par on the last one. And I think it was great to see. And obviously, I think for a lot of people from that generation in sport, certainly in golf, it's a huge fillip for them, because now, I think Padraig Harrington also made the top 10 as well, and he's in the similar sort of age. So, and hopefully, Tiger can get himself back on track and get himself fit and healthy again, because, certainly they're all great names to follow.
Who's going to win the NBA title this year? I'm watching the playoffs early on, and I'm thinking this is as wide open as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, and my Celtics have got it all on against the Nets. So.
Yeah, I don't know about your Celtics. Sorry.
Yeah, I know exactly, but we'll see. We'll see. But obviously, the Nets have gone all out with their group, and you can't look past the Lakers when LeBron is still, as long as he's fit and healthy, and if Anthony Davis he stays fit and healthy, they're going to take some beating as well, because wherever we think about him, LeBron's a special athlete, and special player at this time of year as well. And that's the one thing for me in this level of sports is the big players know when it's time to perform. And that's what I expect. The teams with the best players will bring their best game, and they'll probably end up winning.
Let's bring it back to soccer for one last question. Give me kind of your, you don't have to make a pitch to the Loon supporters, but if you're kind of laying out your vision for how the rest of this year could go, if you're going to be successful, what is it, and what's your confidence level that this vision will be fulfilled?
Well, I've got an awful lot of faith in this group. We went to the Western Conference final last year. I think we've got a better group this year than we had last year. I think now that we are probably where we need to be, maybe through the year one or two might have to leave and one or two might have to be added. But if we had the right pieces, I don't know. I don't see any reason that we can't progressively get better. And when it comes to the final push, I think we'll make the playoffs. And I know from listening to other coaches that once we get in them playoffs, that we will be very, very difficult and very, very dangerous to play against.
It's about all you can ask for. Adrian Heath, thank you so much for joining Daily Delivery today. Enjoy a little bit of that downtime, because that season's going to come fast and furious after that 2-week down break, isn't it not?
Yeah, it is. So we've got nearly every 4 days after that, Michael. So I might enjoy minutes the lake.
Do it.
Minutes, okay, yeah. So
do it. Thanks, anytime. Adrian. Take care.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Let's finish with the cooler. Like I said, I have a couple thoughts on Wild versus Vegas, Game 6 back at XL Energy Center on Wednesday night. Here's the thing. I don't think the Wild has played its best game so far at all in this series, and I think that's a cause of concern, certainly for the Wild, but maybe that's a cause of, maybe it's in the back of Vegas's head a little bit too, like, hey, this series is still going even though our opponent hasn't necessarily showed up to their fullest capabilities. So Wild need to play better, but still alive, and, on home ice doesn't necessarily take their absolute best effort, but they will need to play better than they did in Game 5. One thing I want you to pay particular attention to in this game is the second period. Wild has been outscored 8-1 in the second period of this series, and a lot of times that is where momentum and the scoreboard has turned. Look back to Game 2. Wild gets the first goal in that second period, but Vegas comes back with 2 to take a 2-1 lead. Think of Game 3. Wild takes a 2-0 lead into the second period. Vegas scores 3 times in that period, goes on to win 5-2. And then the big momentum push in Game 5. Wild was up 3-1 after the first period. Vegas pushed. Probably should have gotten more than the 1 goal. Didn't, but still outscored the Wild 1-0 in that period. Could have been even more. So watch that period. It's not just a coincidence. It's the period where they say it's the long change. They like to call it in hockey, where, because of the way the benches are oriented, if you're going to try to change your players on the fly, it is the furthest away from the defensive zone. So it's a harder way to live. It's harder to get players off and on safely without getting caught in your defensive zone, without players and without giving up too many dangerous scoring chances. So the Wild's going to have to figure that out. Vegas kind of stretches that zone and makes it hard on teams. The Wild have to figure out some other maybe different approach to that second period, or it's going to be a long 20 minutes, and it could be a momentum turning 20 minutes again Wednesday night. That'll do it for me today. I'm sure we'll talk plenty of Wild on Thursday as well. Also planning to talk some Gophers football later this week with Randy Johnson, our new Gopher football beat writer at the Star Tribune. That'll do it for today. Please write a review if you would. Leave a rating wherever you get your finer podcasts. Download, subscribe to Star Tribune, startribune.com, and we will catch you again on Thursday.